X's and O's master Chase Glasser of Spartans Illustrated. He joins the show because, well, hey, it's not just us Michigan State diehards that are getting a little excited about this offense. Hey, even a chalk guy like him appreciates what's coming to East Lansing. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Now, of course, you guys know this show. Heck, you're listening to it. But if you need more great Michigan State content in your life, Spartans Illustrated is a great place to go. And we got one of the fine writers over there. His name is Chase Glasser. You guys probably already know him. Very familiar face, familiar voice. Chase, how we doing, man? The offseason treating you okay over there?
I'm doing great. I am doing really well. Yes, sir.
We'd like to hear that. And I think that you're going to make our days a little better here, too, because you just had a great piece on Spartans Illustrated breaking down the X's, the O's of Brian Lindgren's offense, what Aidan Chiles can provide, a few of the other transfer players like Jack Velling. No, we're not going to give it all away. This is a paid product here, so Spartans Illustrated is where to subscribe if you want the nitty-gritty, hardcore details, but we're going to talk about it from an overview standpoint. Chase, I did love reading this piece over my lunch break today, and what I loved was that there's a little bit of a comparison to Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson. Like many Lions fans and like a lot of other Michigan State fans, you know, I like myself some Lions. I like the success. I like the offense they run. It's very fun. Now, during this coaching search, Chase, there was a small contingent of fans out there that were saying, hey, just throw Ben Johnson $12 million and see if he wants to take the head coaching job. Whether that was people being serious or whether they were joking around. Hey, Chase, is this offense kind of like, no, we're not going to get Ben Johnson because we have Ben Johnson at home? Like, is it one of these things? Or what are there any parallels between what we could see in East Lansing and what Ben Johnson likes to run on Sundays here in Detroit?
I mean, I think in part and somewhat narrowly construed, I think Ben Johnson's awesome. And no, the Lions offense is not what you're going to get. But the broader point that I was making was that if you look at how Oregon State likes to attack defenses, it is fairly reminiscent of what the Lions did formationally against the Buccaneers. So no, you're not getting Ben Johnson, who I think is an outstanding coordinator, but I think what you are getting and what you can say confidently that you're getting is a very sound offensive mind who understands the importance of pre-snap kind of formational aspects of football in a way that I think fans are really going to like. So in that narrow regard, yes, I think you might be getting some Ben Johnson in that kind of narrowly construed way, which I think is good. I think that's really good.
Even a little bit of Ben Johnson still goes a long way here in a football game, so we'll take it.
Yes.
You broke down a lot of like the pre-snap motion and everything in your piece. And I want to just go to Twitter really quick because J. Bud Davis, great account. He charts a lot of plays, not just for Michigan State, but for colleges around the country. And there was one stat that he pulled up. Now, these were from the middle of the season, so they might have been a little off when the season ended. But pre-snap motion, Oregon State ran 28% of the time, whereas Michigan State just did pre-snap motion just 16% of the time. Now, there's 3 schools of thought why you do pre-snap motion in football, and please correct me if I'm wrong here. Momentum, get a receiver a head start, if you will, before he just goes on a route and just gets out there like a rocket. Deception, of course, confusing the defense, and then leverage as well. You could make your formations a little wider. You could pull a guy in and add an extra blocker. So those are the 3 schools of thought. Is there any school of thought that you see Brian Lindgren's motion kind of targeting the most? Is it to get guys momentum downfield before the ball snap? Is it the art of deception, or is it leverage, or is it obviously a combination of all 3, but is that truly what it is? I mean, how do you decide
I think it's all of that, and you can add to that those 3 aspects, which I think all of them are accurate. Identification. When you're moving a slot receiver from one side of the formation to another, and you're looking at who follows him. Is somebody following him, or does just a linebacker or a safety bump over? That's a man versus zone tell. And if you look at the two teams that played in the national title game this year, Washington tortured people with motion. And they were just to be able to move people around pre-snap, and they call it cheetah motion, where you get someone kind of motioning in, then going out. It messes with the defense's keys and gets people open in a pretty nice way. And they were very successful, and a huge reason why Michigan beat Alabama. Alabama, the cover 3 that they run, it's all based on post-snap checks and Ripley's match and pattern matching and all that. And that's something that Saban invented, and it works really, really well. But Michigan had some sort of pre-snap motion and some sort of a post-snap read on almost every play. And when you have an Alabama defense that is maybe a little less veteran than they have been in the past, that really allowed a Michigan offense, which I think is good in parts, but compared to Alabama and teams like that, you don't have quite the same talent across the field, but it allowed a very veteran Michigan offense to make some hay there. So yeah, I mean, Lindgren is going to use a fair amount of motion. They move people around quite a bit before the snap. And then something that I really noticed a lot was what they did after the snap. And I called it in the piece window dressing. And you're doing all sorts of crazy stuff in ways that really mess with linebackers. And if you can deliver somebody to the second level untouched or more cleanly, that's such an advantage for your offense. So, I mean, you might have a tight end blocking across the formation with the play side wide receiver coming around, for what looks like a jet sweep. And then there's a handoff and a counter step. And you have so many people going all sorts of different directions. It's really hard for the defense to remain disciplined. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It can. But it makes it a lot more difficult. It's also going to make it a little more difficult for viewers to follow where the ball is. But that's the price you pay for a deceptive offense. And just if you get a team right now, I mean, you're seeing a lot of movement in college football, just as far as people transfer and people don't stay around as long and things like that. So this is kind of conjecture, but just anecdotally, I think you're seeing a lot more players playing earlier. Or you don't have these teams that are super veteran and retain a lot of their players. That's becoming a little bit more of a rarity. So your communication may be a little more ad hoc and things may break down. And when you have all this stress on a defense with how you're moving people around, you can see some busts. And, that's so helpful for an offense just to be able to create plays and make the defense wrong. And I think that's really what this offense does, is it can make the defense wrong.
So this just might be a stupid question, and I don't even know if you'll have an answer because we're kind of just hypothesizing why, perhaps. But why doesn't a team just always do motion then? Like I just said, Michigan State did it just 16% of the time in pre-snap. Is there a reason you could think of? Is it because of obviously maybe the learning curve for some of the players on offense? Like that's just another layer you have to add, and maybe they weren't veteran enough like a Michigan was this year, where you return a lot of the guys you can keep on building on top of that? Or is it just ineptitude? Like, why wouldn't a team always run motion? Because it seems, based on the last 5 minutes of conversation, it's a no-brainer to just run some motion, confuse some people, and get some momentum out there in the open field. Any idea why or no?
There's different schools of thought. The whole kind of momentum thing and the cheetah motion, that's all very new. You have to coach it right, because if you do it wrong, all of a sudden you got 2 men in motion, or you've got too many people in the backfield, and you get a procedure penalty. I feel like every year you get a good clip of somebody going in motion and the snap being thrown right into their helmet, and then kind of all hell breaks loose. So I mean, there's things that can go wrong there. And some coaches also like, we're just going to line up in what we're going to line up, and we're going to see how the defense aligns to that, and we're going to have a post snap read. We don't need motion, and that can work too. Like that's something that very much works, and I think all offenses use motion to an extent, some more than others. It's just kind of a philosophical thing. It's not, one side's not necessarily right and one side's not wrong. I certainly like it. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way to do stuff. It's kind of like running a no huddle offense or running screens. There's some teams, Michigan's one of them, that are just very screen averse. They really don't run screens. And when they do, they're very poorly telegraphed and they don't work that well. Lindgren is not that. I mean, he's going to run a lot of screens and smoke routes and take advantage of free yards. I like that. Some coaches don't, just because there's things that can go wrong. If ball's thrown backwards behind the line of scrimmage, it's not caught, that's a fumble. Or the chance that it gets completely blown up is maybe a little bit higher. So there's different schools of thought. I just happen to really like everything I saw from Lindgren's offense, so I like it. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way to do things.
Fair enough. And we're going to get into a little bit of the formations here. We'll get into Aidan Chiles talk, and then we're going to talk former assistant coaches here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But Chase, I hate to do this to you. I got to send you to the sidelines because I need to talk to people's ears off about eBay Motors. Folks, passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. I'll say that again. 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You will always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or it's your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So what are you waiting for? Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's drag him back on here. The one, the only Chase Glasser of Spartans Illustrated. And you highlighted a lot of formations that Brian Lindgren runs that we can expect to see here on the turf in East Lansing. Is there any one formation that stuck out to you for, one reason or another, whether you liked it, whether it's something that he uses a lot that's going to be new to Michigan State fans, or what's one formation that really stuck out to you here?
Yeah, so the one that I picked, and this is the one where I drew the clearest line of comparison to what the Lions did against the Buccaneers. I called it a 3-by-1 tight bunch, and it's a very tight split. So and they use that a lot. They keep their wide receivers in pretty tight. And which is fine. Again, it's just a philosophical thing, not right, not wrong. I don't mind it. It gives you more leverage to work outside of the field and make some easy throws there. On the downside, it makes it, the space is constricted, so it may be a little easier to defend, but I think the positives outweigh the negatives. But it's you have your normal offensive line set. Normally, I think they do it out of the they do it both out of the gun and under center. It's normally you got just one running back and the quarterback in the backfield, your 5 offensive linemen. You have on one side of the formation just one wide receiver. On the other side of the formation, you have a tight little trio trip set. And they do a lot of stuff out of that. They run to the opposite side of it a lot because you have 3 people on one side. It kind of forces the linebackers to bump over and lighten the box a little bit. They run towards it and use those people to create more gaps. A lot of times they have a big tight end kind of guy who's able to crack block a linebacker. There's a lot of really good pass routes you can run out of that and kind of rub guys off on each other and create some spacing there. They stack the receivers a lot and create leverage. And that's something that the Lions used a lot in like second in medium, third and medium to create some quick throw, quick strike stuff. So that's one that I would really highlight as something that they can do a lot out of. Also, because of those tight splits, you can motion receivers in like a jet action or an orbit motion a lot. And that's something that they do quite a bit of. So that was one where I really saw they do quite a bit out of this particular set. And there's a lot of different stuff that they run. But that's one that really kind of stood out to me.
Gotcha. And we're going to talk about one of the new players here in a little bit, Aidan Chiles, the talk of the offseason.
Mm-hmm.
But first, Chase, we're going to talk about a former player. Connor Hayward, is he coming back to Michigan State? Like, because I did notice that you put him in your piece and it made sense. Hey, maybe some more H-back. Now, I do wonder, who's that going to be on this team? Like, is it going to be Jaron Mangum? Like, he seems to have maybe the body type. Is it going to be a Jack Valens? I don't know who it's going to be, but I thought that was very interesting that, hey, the return of CH in the H-back could be back in East Lansing, but sure, why not?
I mean, I loved Connor Hayward. I think watching him play was really fun just because he was such like a program guy, and not even so much that like, he was on a source of leadership through some fairly tumultuous times, and then obviously he went out with a bang with that good 21 team. And well, I believe he was a captain. If not, it certainly seemed like a guy who was a vocal leader and all that, but also just he did so many different things. He was a running back, and then he was a tight end, and then he really kind of found that niche as an H-back where, you're kind of half tight end, half running back. You're doing a lot of dirty work, a lot of blocking. You're taking on defensive ends. You're getting the ball. You're catching the ball. You're a decoy. It's a selfless position, but such an important one. And he was so good in that role. It was so fun watching him play. And I think Oregon State does that a lot. They had Jack Velling is one where they more of a true tight end, but a beefy guy who could take on a lot of blocks, but also catch the ball and handle the ball and do well in that regard. Mangum is a guy who just seems gritty, and do well in that, just kind of doing the dirty work there. But Oregon State uses guys like that quite a bit. And that just seems to, in my mind, so fit with Michigan State's program ethos of just, we're going to kind of out hit you and outwork you and blue collar and all that good stuff. And in the best way possible, I think that you're going to see players like that, just kind of the grit, if you will, and that kind of half tight end hybrid. I really like the position. I think it's a lot of fun. And I think like you look at a team like Georgia, obviously Brock Bowers is a name that everybody knows because he's
totally
multiple-time Mackey Award winner and an awesome tight end. But they use people like that too, and just doing the dirty work, allowing them to run the ball as this fullback, running back, tight end hybrid. I think it's a really fun position, and I think that you're going to see a return to that. And I think that that's going to be good for viewers because it's fun, and the team because I think that they use players like that well in this offense.
Yeah, good old Connor Hayward. I'm still coughing up feathers with the amount of crow I ate about him because, it turned out in the end, it was just he was simply playing out of position for the start of his career. But man, did he make some hay there at the end in 2021? And still hanging out in the league, being a very productive player for the Steelers. So good for him. But it'll be nice to see that position back, harken back to the grit days, we'll call them.
Sure.
Now on the flashier side, Aidan Chiles. Chase, I don't know if you've heard. I've heard that he's going to be a pretty good player for Michigan State. There's a lot of excitement around this guy. He wasn't ranked the number one portal quarterback by 24/7 Sports by mistake.
Right.
Now, after crunching so much film that you can't believe it, that you're nauseous probably over there, do you feel even higher on Aidan Chiles than you did beforehand? Like just when you're reading all the smoke after you get into the film? Like where do you see out of this Aidan Chiles guy can us Spartans be jazzed?
I think you should be jazzed, man. I think he's going to be really good. And I think part of the reason is like, you look at the portal quarterback rankings. Is he going to be the guy who comes in and is the best this year? No. And that's a good thing for Michigan State because he's really young. So it's not a 1-year rental. Like Will Howard might go to Ohio State for 1 year and win a title, but you're bringing in a new coaching staff, a new program ethos, and you have a guy who's young, who's going to be there for at least a couple of years. I think that's so important. It's not like your 1-year rental and then you're going to find another 1-year rental and then a guy that you recruit might be ready. This is a guy who's going to be there for a while. And man, I mean, he's got so many tools and he's fun to watch. He's really athletic. Lindgren and Oregon State, they run their quarterbacks quite a bit. DJ Uiagalelei was a fairly mobile quarterback. And I think Chiles is him plus. I'd like to see him in the weight room just because you're gonna take some licks in this league running your quarterback. But having an 11-on-11 run game is so critical. And they use their quarterbacks as off of the zone read, but they also do designed runs too. And he's shown good burst, good explosiveness in both of those regards. I clipped a couple, or I think one play really where sometimes he trusts his athleticism a little too much. And it's one thing to kind of do the no, yes play against UC Davis. It's a little different when you're playing, Penn State or somebody like that. But he's young and that's fine. There's some signs that he's young. The progressions sometimes aren't all there and he locks onto receivers, but that's any young quarterback. And he's really, really athletic. He's got a good arm. He's smooth on the RPOs. He can get out of the pocket and run, which is good. Just because to the extent that sacks are a quarterback stat, if you're avoiding those, that's awesome. The ball placement's pretty good. There's a lot to like about him. I think he's checks every box that you want. Seems like a really good kid and really athletic. It's just, I think the perfect player that you want coming in for this new offense, kind of turning the page on everything and hitting the ground running. It's so critical to have a good quarterback, a young guy that you can build around. And somebody who's familiar with the offensive coordinator. I think it's huge. It's super, super huge. I'm looking forward to him. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see what he can do.
And I'm glad you brought that up too, that, hey, he might not be the number one quarterback like right away. He is that ranking for two reasons. The floor, like you already see what his physical tools are. He does have a great arm. He's got legs. What that ceiling is
to be clear, is good. Like the floor is good.
Yeah, sure.
A total project that's unwatchable. He's going to be just fine, but
yeah, and we're kind of seeing it too with like, how basketball rankings work. Like if you can make the direct comparison to Xavier Booker, a guy who was a 5-star All-American. I've said it 1,000 times here. He's got the 5-star. I think it's very clear by now because of what his ceiling is. Like he's got the physical tools, the traits. Now I expect Aidan Chiles to have a more productive year on the football field than Xavier Booker has on the basketball court so far.
Yes,
that's much of a stretch. We're gonna have some issues if that's not the case. but that is good to point out that the reason he was number one, for his floor, which is good. But that ceiling can also be
right now, February 20 or January 24th. He's playable right now, and it's only gonna get better. 100%.
And there's a lot of other great stuff in that piece. Again, Spartans Illustrated, go subscribe. We can't give all the goodies away there. But before we flip the page to the next topic here, Chase, anything else that you just wanted to add really quick about your piece over there about the offense next year?
I mean, I think something that's kind of been running through my mind is you don't think it can happen to your team until it does. And I mean, that's with the Lions, not only my whole life, but I think both of our probably father's whole life. It can't happen until it does, right? I mean, my senior year of college, I was watching Michigan go to triple overtime with Rutgers on a Romanian streaming site because we didn't get Big Ten Network. And, then this past year happened. And you talk to anybody in my family, the longtime MSU fans, what Michigan State was until Mark D'Antonio came. You don't think it can happen until it does. And I just think that you look at this league and, Ohio State, they're going to be really good next year, but they're one slip up in late November from Ryan Day not being there. And then who knows who they hire, right? I mean, Penn State, they should be salty defense. They're going to be good. They're going to be talented, but I'll believe it when I see it with Franklin.
Correct. With
Wisconsin, I don't think they're a huge threat to win it. Dan Lanning there's beginning of the whispers that the big game thing is kind of a thing with him. Though I think he's very good and Oregon's going to be very good. USC has not really fielded a defense until they do. Washington, their coach and a bunch of players left, and Jim Harbaugh is actively trying to leave Michigan. Any NFL team that will take him. And, I think Sharon Moore is a fine coach and a good run architect, but, it's I don't think they're going to be what they have been. They're losing a lot, and who knows what's coming down the pipe from the NCAA. So it's like you look at this league and there's a path, and I just think Michigan State's on such a good path and they're doing everything right. They're the depth that they've got in the portal. They haven't had this huge exit of people that would be overly harmful. I think the staff is doing everything the right way. You hear good stuff out of all of the right Michigan high school coaches about the relationships that they're establishing, right? Not necessarily being from Michigan. Everything that's being done seems like it's being done the right way to set up for long-term success. Will it happen? I don't know, but it just seems like everything's being done the right way. And I think that having a good, clear offensive through line is so important in that regard. And I think that you're going to have that with Lindgren. And I think that Michigan State's going to be a lot better for it. It's in my mind, it's hard not to be excited about where this thing is going. So that's kind of my end commentary on that.
You heard it here first, folks. Chase Glasser of Spartans Illustrated saying Michigan State is going to go 11-1 within the next 2 years. That's what I heard. At
Many
least over here.
Saying, not me, but people.
Many, yeah. So really quick before we get you out the door here and get all the viewers and listeners back to enjoying the rest of their day, we're going to end on this question. This came from Jason over at lockedonspartans@gmail.com. He wants to know where a few of Mel's former assistant coaches went. He says he knows that Jay Johnson is at Wyoming. Then he adds, good luck to them. That's a fair comment. We'll leave it at that. Jay Johnson, he's over at Wyoming. Chris Kopilovic, the offensive line coach, he's at Baylor. Jim Salgado, he went to the NFL, back to the NFL. He's with the Commanders. And Dyron Reynolds, he's at Arizona State. Yep. Courtney Hawkins, of course, still with Michigan State. So that leaves Ephraim Reed, the running backs coach, Ted Gilmore, the tight ends coach, Harlan Barnett, secondary coach, and of course the interim head coach. Ross Ells, shocking, he hasn't gone anywhere yet. And then Scottie Hazelton, those are the 5 guys that have not found another home. But Chase, I do want to ask, we don't have to blow out, the all 5 guys that haven't found a home. I do find it interesting that Scottie Hazelton has not gone somewhere. Now, this could just be a personal preference of, hey, I made some good money in my last few years. I'm going to hit pause on a year, enjoy my relaxation family before I go back.
Yeah.
But even guys like Chad Wilt, a guy that was a co-defensive coordinator at Indiana, which is not a good defense whatsoever, hey, he just found an assistant job here in East Lansing. It wouldn't be crazy to see Scottie Hazelton find at least an assistant job somewhere else in the country. Are you a little surprised that he hasn't landed somewhere? And again, I'll say it could be a personal thing, but that's kind of interesting that if coordinator just hasn't found another job like that, kind of like Jay Johnson has.
I mean, he could, go to the beach and do that for a year, and I don't think anybody'd blame him. I
would.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I would too.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think a lot of this, it could be a personal preference thing. And also, like, the whole coaching world, the more you learn about it, it's also kind of incestual and insular, where it's like,
right,
there's all sorts of clickiness, and people are friends with people, and people on certain staffs. It's like, oh, I don't want to work with this guy, so even though I could get a job here, I don't want to. Or people who you think, how in the world, you see it in the NFL sometimes. It's like, how does X person keep getting jobs? And it's like everybody knows everybody.
Matt Patricia. Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's like, there's this whole thing of like the late Lloyd Carr era guys who like all got jobs at Bowling Green because Scott Loeffler coaches bowling. It's like all this, and it happens with a bunch of schools everywhere, where it's like there's all of this kind of whole job black market that I don't really care to understand and don't want to. But like, so there's that aspect of it, and then it's a little surprising to me that Hazelton hasn't gotten a job. It may be that he doesn't want it. It may be that just he wants to take some time. I would imagine if he wanted one, he'd get one, but that's total conjecture. I don't know that. But it's like, I think Jay Johnson was at Wyoming before in some capacity, right?
Okay.
Or at least if he wasn't, he was somewhere out on the plains in that region. So I thought he may have had some sort of link to their staff. I don't know if I'm inventing that or if that's true. But there's things like that where, was he at like North Dakota or something? I don't know, but was Hazelton at Wyoming? I don't know. I'm talking confidently about things I don't know.
If you say it with confidence, we will just blindly believe you. But no, Jay Johnson, I'm seeing Truman State, Kansas, Southern Miss, Louisville, Central Michigan,
Kansas,
Minnesota.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking of the Kansas thing. Okay, so no, not Wyoming. But there's there's always a kind of subtext there that you can assume. But I mean, I think what we can say is that these people are not even getting kind of the Nick Saban memorial tour of being an assistant for 1 year and then going somewhere else as a position coach and kind of working their way back. So I think we can say that maybe they were not necessarily at the top of their field and leave it at that. It's not a reflection on anything other than just the professional nature of the game and things like that. It's not anything personal, but it's just, I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself a bit. I do say, I think with the staff that they're assembling now, I don't think you're going to have that problem, should everybody scatter and there's a diaspora of current Michigan State coaches going elsewhere. I know a lot of people, I've heard really good things about the secondary guy they picked up from Oregon. I know Chad Wilt from Indiana. Everybody says really good things about him as like a teacher, and that's so important. I mean, Rossi obviously has had very good defenses at Minnesota, and Lindgren we've talked on. But I think this is a good staff. I think it's a staff that can teach, which is so important. It's not just about coming in with all these whiz bang kind of strategies. And Iowa's just run straight up, honest to God, cover two, but they teach it so well. It's super solid to defend. So just having people who can teach, I think, is so important. And I mean, you listen to guys like I remember there was an interview with Izzo and Beeline, and both of them talked about how important it was for their assistants to be able to be hands-on teachers. And they were both pretty good coaches. And it's just, I think what's being done with the staff here is really good. And I think there's bright things ahead.
And good luck to all of them. I mean, it's not like they're monsters, even though I did say during the season that Rossell should go to prison. I was a little heated in the moment. I'd like to walk that one back, maybe. Right. But, at the end of the day, too, it's like I'm not going to lose too much sleep because they made some generational money. Like,
I mean,
They did okay.
Yeah. I don't think any of them are hurting too much in the bank account if they're smart with it at all. So
we're not going to do a telethon for them necessarily. But hey, again, best of luck to them. Hope they land on their feet. And I hope that, the guys that aren't hired, this is by choice and they just want to, take a break after a very odd last few months of their coaching careers. So
sure.
Who could blame them? But folks, speaking of great teachers, that's Chase Glasser over there, Spartans Illustrated. Again, you guys already know him. And if you don't, hey, well, hopefully this is a good first episode for you in the world of Chase. Until next time, though, because, we will drag you back on Chase, respectively. So there you go. But gang, tomorrow we will be joined by Carter Elliott. We're going to talk all things hoops. That's right. Back-to-back Spartans Illustrated episodes here on Locked on Spartans. Football today, basketball tomorrow. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day. Love you all. Go Green.